Marcus Chen stood at the edge of the crowded alien marketplace, his brown eyes scanning the vibrant chaos before him. The space station's artificial gravity pulled at his boots as he navigated through creatures of every imaginable shape and size. Towering insectoids clicked their mandibles in conversation with floating gas-filled beings that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. The air hummed with a dozen different languages, translated through his neural implant into a constant stream of overlapping voices. He had been traveling through this sector of the galaxy for 3 months now, searching for rare minerals that Earth's expanding colonies desperately needed. The Terran Federation had sent him alone, as they often did with human scouts. Other species found humans unremarkable, which made them excellent spies and negotiators. What they saw was exactly what Marcus appeared to be: a soft, pink creature with no natural weapons, no armor plating, no venomous stingers or acidic secretions. The mineral dealer he sought operated from a stall near the station's core. As Marcus approached, he noticed the vendor was a Krillian, one of the warrior races that dominated this part of the galaxy. The creature stood nearly 8 feet tall, its chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the artificial lights. 4 arms ending in razor-sharp claws gestured as it spoke to another customer, and its compound eyes reflected the surrounding chaos like black mirrors. "Excuse me," Marcus said, stepping forward when the previous customer left. "I'm looking for rare earth elements, specifically neodymium and europium compounds." The Krillian's massive head swiveled toward him, and all 4 eyes focused on his face. A sound that might have been laughter rumbled from its throat. "A human. How amusing. You want to purchase military-grade materials?" The translator made its voice sound like grinding metal. "That's correct. I have the proper documentation and credits." Documentation. The alien's mandibles clicked in what Marcus recognized as derision. "Tell me, Softskin, what could your pathetic species possibly need with such materials? Building toys for your children?" Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks but kept his expression neutral. He had encountered this attitude before. Humans were seen as one of the weakest species in known space, barely worthy of consideration. They had no natural weapons, their technology was considered primitive, and their military forces were small compared to the major galactic powers. "We're expanding our industrial base," Marcus replied evenly. "These elements are essential for our manufacturing processes." The Krillian leaned closer, its breath smelling of sulfur and ozone. "Industrial base. Yes, I've heard about human industry. Your kind builds with metal and plastic like insects constructing a nest. No elegance, no biological integration, just crude tools for a crude species." Around them, other vendors and customers had begun to notice the conversation. Marcus could feel their attention like a weight on his shoulders. A group of reptilian traders hissed their amusement, while a cluster of crystalline beings chimed in harmonious mockery. "Look at it," the Krillian announced to the growing audience, gesturing with one clawed hand at Marcus. "No natural armor, no claws or fangs, skin so thin you can see the blood vessels beneath. How did such a fragile species ever survive to reach the stars?" More laughter rippled through the crowd. A serpentine creature with scales that shifted color called out, "Perhaps they taste good? Is that their purpose?" "Too bony," replied a massive, bear-like alien with 6 arms. "Not enough meat on those weak frames." Marcus stood perfectly still, his hands at his sides. He had learned long ago that reacting to such provocations only made things worse. Humans were already seen as emotional and unstable by many species. Losing his temper would only confirm their prejudices. The Krillian circled him slowly like a predator examining prey. "You know what I think, little human? I think your species exists only because the galaxy has grown soft. In the old days, the strong devoured the weak. Natural selection kept the universe clean." "Perhaps you're right," Marcus said quietly. This seemed to surprise the alien. Its head tilted and its compound eyes glittered. "Oh, you admit your inferiority?" "I admit that humans aren't the strongest or the fastest or the most heavily armed species in the galaxy." Finally, some honesty from a human. The Krillian's mandibles spread in what might have been a smile. "So tell me, Softskin, how does it feel to know that any warrior in this marketplace could tear you apart without effort?" Marcus looked around at the assembled crowd. Dozens of aliens watched him with expressions ranging from amusement to contempt. Some were taking recordings, probably to share with friends back home. He could imagine the captions, "Weak human admits defeat" or "Earth creature knows its place." "It feels," Marcus said slowly, Like a reminder. A reminder of what? Marcus began rolling up the sleeves of his simple brown jacket, revealing his forearms. The skin there was crisscrossed with scars of every description, thin white lines from blades, puckered circles from energy weapons, rough patches where flesh had been burned and regrown. The marks continued up his arms, disappearing beneath his clothing. The Krillian's laughter died in its throat. The chattering crowd grew silent. A reminder, Marcus continued, his voice carrying clearly in the sudden quiet, that humans have survived this long for a reason. The marketplace had gone completely silent. Even the constant background hum of translation devices seemed muted, as every eye focused on the scars covering Marcus's exposed arms. The Krillian took a step backward, its compound eyes studying the network of marks that told a story of violence survived. Blade work, the alien said after a long moment, pointing with one claw at a particularly long scar that ran from Marcus's wrist to his elbow. Clean cuts. Military precision. Kethmaran warriors, Marcus replied simply. 3 of them ambushed me on Proxima 7 during the mining dispute. They thought one soft human would be easy prey. A low murmur ran through the crowd. Everyone knew about the Kethmaran. They were legendary fighters, their blade skills unmatched in known space. For a human to face 3 of them and survive was almost impossible to believe. The serpentine traitor who had joked about humans being food slithered closer, its color-changing scales now a nervous yellow-green. Those burn marks, it hissed, examining circular scars on Marcus's forearm. Plasma rifles? Energy weapons, yes, but not rifles. Marcus touched the scarred flesh with his finger. These are from a Vorthak pain stick. They like to torture their prey before killing it. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Vorthak were nightmare creatures, insectoid predators that hunted sentient beings for sport. They were known throughout the galaxy for their cruelty, using specialized weapons designed to inflict maximum agony while keeping their victims alive as long as possible. A crystalline being chimed a question, its voice like wind through broken glass. How did you escape, Vorthak? They never release prey that still lives. Marcus smiled grimly. I didn't escape. I killed them. Impossible, the bear-like alien growled. Vorthak have natural armor that deflects most weapons. Their reflexes are 20 times faster than human baseline. That's true, Marcus agreed, but they're also arrogant. They assume their prey is helpless once captured. They never expected me to have a backup plan. He pointed to a cluster of small, precise scars near his shoulder. Emergency beacon, surgically implanted. When activated, it sends a distress signal and releases combat stimulants directly into my bloodstream. The Vorthak thought they were playing with a helpless human. Instead, they found themselves facing someone who had nothing left to lose, and the chemical enhancement to back up his desperation. The Krillian merchant leaned forward, studying Marcus with new interest. Combat stimulants are military grade, restricted technology. Human military service leaves its mark, Marcus said, rolling his sleeve higher to reveal more scars. These are from the siege of New Babylon. Held the line for 6 days against Zephyrian shock troops. Every alien present knew that name. New Babylon had been humanity's most distant colony, cut off from reinforcement when the Zephyrian Empire decided to test human resolve. Military analysts had predicted the colony would fall within hours. Instead, a handful of human defenders had held out for 2 weeks until relief arrived. The Zephyrians reported minimal casualties, the crystalline being chimed. Skeptically, they reported what they wanted to. Report, Marcus replied. We didn't have enough firepower to fight them directly, so we adapted. Humans are very good at adaptation. We used their own tactics against them, learned their weaknesses, exploited their assumptions. A new voice spoke from the back of the crowd. Tell us about the others. The speaker was a tall, ethereal being with translucent skin and hollow black eyes. The crowd parted respectfully as it approached. Marcus recognized the species. Navigators, one of the oldest races in the galaxy and among the most respected for their wisdom. Marcus looked down at his arms, choosing his words carefully. This one is from a Hegaran acid spitter. Mercenary work on the rim. The client neglected to mention that the target was protected by professional killers. Hegarans hunt in packs, the navigator observed. You faced more than one. A dozen. They cornered me in a dead-end canyon. Thought they had easy prey. But humans don't give up easily, and we're very good at making the most of limited resources. Marcus traced a jagged scar with his finger, turned their own acid against them, set up a chain reaction that brought down half the canyon wall. The Krillian merchant was studying Marcus with something approaching respect now. You seem to specialize in impossible victories, human. Not impossible, just improbable. But that's what humans do best. Marcus began rolling his other sleeve up, revealing fresh scars alongside older ones. We survive things that should kill us. We adapt to situations that should break us. We find ways to win fights we should lose. A small, furry creature near the front of the crowd spoke up in a high-pitched voice. But you're so small, so weak. How do you compensate for your physical limitations? Marcus smiled, and for the first time, there was something genuinely warm in his expression. That's the wrong question. The right question is, what do you do when you can't rely on natural weapons? When you can't count on being the strongest or the fastest or the toughest? He paused, looking around at the assembled aliens. You learn to think. You learn to plan. You learn to use every advantage available to you, no matter how small. And most importantly, you learn that sometimes the greatest strength comes from being underestimated. The navigator stepped closer, its ancient eyes studying Marcus intently. Show us the rest, it said simply. Marcus hesitated for a moment, then began unbuttoning his jacket. Marcus removed his jacket slowly, revealing a torso that told the story of 100 battles. The crowd pressed closer, their earlier mockery replaced by fascination and growing respect. Every species present had warriors in their culture, but what they saw on this human's body was something different entirely. This one, Marcus said, pointing to a massive scar that curved around his ribs like a crescent moon, was from a draconian berserker during the Outer Rim Rebellion. Single combat, no weapons except what we could find in the wreckage of a crashed transport. The bear-like alien let out a low rumble of disbelief. Draconians are 12 feet tall. Their bone density is 3 times human baseline. How did you survive close combat with one? Physics, Marcus replied matter-of-factly. Being larger means you need more time to change direction. Being stronger means you put more force behind your attacks, which creates larger openings when you miss. I used his advantages against him. A new arrival pushed through the crowd, a sleek feline humanoid with silver fur and predator's eyes. Marcus recognized the species. Kavari, professional assassins and mercenaries known throughout the galaxy for their skill in personal combat. Draconians don't miss, the Kavari said coldly. Their combat training begins before they can walk. This one was trained, Marcus agreed. But he was also angry. Rage makes you predictable. I kept moving, kept him turning, kept him frustrated until he made a mistake. Marcus traced the scar with his finger. He lunged for what he thought was a killing blow. Instead, he impaled himself on a piece of twisted metal I'd been maneuvering him toward for 10 minutes. The Kavari's ears flicked back in surprise. That level of tactical thinking during single combat was rare, even among professional warriors. And this, the navigator pointed to a cluster of small, round scars on Marcus's shoulder. Needle spines from a Thorakian pain beast. Prison planet Zerion 9. The warden thought it would be amusing to throw a human into the gladiator pits. Every alien present knew about Zerion 9. It was where the galaxy's worst criminals were sent to die for the entertainment of others. Survival in the pits was measured in minutes, not days. Pain beasts are designed to kill slowly, the Krillian said, its earlier hostility replaced by professional curiosity. Their venom causes paralysis and then system failure over several hours. Unless you have a tolerance built up over time, Marcus replied. Humans have been using controlled doses of various toxins for medical and recreational purposes for millennia. Our metabolism is remarkably adaptable. He pointed to several other small scars. I'd been building immunity to common paralytic agents as part of my military training. The pain beast's venom was unpleasant but not fatal to someone with the right preparation. A thin, insectoid creature clicked its mandibles thoughtfully. Preparation suggests you expected to face such creatures. I did. Intelligence is humanity's greatest weapon. We study our enemies, learn their capabilities, prepare for every possible scenario. Marcus smiled grimly. The warden on Zerion 9 learned that lesson the hard way. You killed a warden? The serpentine trader's scale shifted to a shocked blue-white. Security on those planets is absolute. It's impossible to reach the administrative levels. Nothing is impossible, just improbable. Marcus touched a long, thin scar that ran diagonally across his chest. The warden made the mistake of getting curious about how a human had survived in the pits for 3 months. He came to see me personally. The crowd was completely silent now, hanging on every word. He brought guards, of course. Full armor, energy weapons, the works. But he also brought his arrogance. He wanted to gloat, to understand what made me different from the hundreds of other prisoners who had died in the pits. Marcus paused, remembering. What he didn't understand was that humans don't just survive impossible situations. We learn from them. 3 months in those pits had taught me everything about the facility's security systems. Guard rotations and weak points. The HFY assassin leaned forward, professional interest evident in its predatory gaze. You staged an escape during the meeting. Better than that. I staged a revolution. Marcus's smile was cold as space. While the warden was showing off his prize human, I was releasing every other prisoner in the facility. The guards were too busy trying to contain the chaos to protect their boss. He touched the diagonal scar again. The warden was a good fighter. Much better than me in a fair contest. But it wasn't a fair contest. It was a human who had spent 3 months planning his revenge against someone who thought he was completely powerless. The navigator stepped closer, its ancient eyes reflecting something like awe. You destroyed an entire prison planet. I freed it, Marcus corrected. The prisoners took care of the rest themselves. Turns out most of them had very specific grievances against their captors. An uncomfortable silence fell over the crowd. Everyone present understood the implications of what they had heard. This wasn't just a warrior's tale of survival. It was a demonstration of something far more dangerous: human adaptability and planning capability. The Krillian merchant was the first to speak again. There are more scars, it observed, pointing to marks that disappeared beneath Marcus's remaining clothing. Marcus nodded slowly. Many more. Each one is a lesson learned, an enemy defeated, an impossible situation overcome. He looked around at the assembled aliens. You want to know how humans survive in a galaxy full of stronger, faster, more dangerous species? He began putting his jacket back on. We turn your strengths into weaknesses. We learn from every encounter. We adapt faster than you can change your tactics, and we never ever give up, no matter how hopeless the situation appears. The marketplace remained silent as Marcus finished dressing. When he looked up, he found every eye still focused on him. But the expressions had changed completely from the mockery and contempt he had faced minutes earlier. Now, he said to the Krillian merchant, about those rare earth elements. The Krillian merchant stared at Marcus for several long moments before its mandibles clicked in what might have been nervous laughter. The rare earth elements, yes. Of course. Its forearms gestured toward its stall, movements noticeably more respectful than before. Please, honored customer, let me show you what I have available. The crowd began to disperse, but slowly, reluctantly. Many aliens lingered nearby, pretending to examine other vendors' wares while keeping Marcus in their peripheral vision. The HFY assassin remained motionless near the stall's edge, its predatory eyes never leaving the human. I have quality neodymium compounds here, the Krillian said, manipulating a holographic display with practiced ease. Military grade as you requested, and europium stocks that arrived just yesterday from the mining worlds. Marcus examined the displayed information with professional interest, but he could feel the weight of attention from the surrounding crowd. Word was spreading through the marketplace with the speed that only gossip could achieve. He caught fragments of whispered conversations in a dozen languages, all centering on the same theme: the human warrior with the scarred skin. Your prices seem reasonable, Marcus said, studying the holographic readouts. But I'll need verification of purity levels and chain of custody documentation. Naturally. The Krillian's respect was evident in its tone. I would expect nothing less from someone of your experience. As the merchant prepared the requested documentation, the navigator approached Marcus again. Its translucent form seemed to shimmer in the artificial light as it spoke in a voice like distant wind. There is something I must know, human. The scars we have seen, the battles you have described, these represent perhaps 24 encounters. But you have been traveling the galaxy for years. Marcus looked up from the holographic displays. Your point? Where are the scars from your failures? Every warrior has defeats, moments when they were outmatched or outmaneuvered. Yet you show us only victories. The question drew the attention of nearby aliens. Even the Krillian paused in its documentation preparation to listen. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, considering his words. "You're right," he said finally. "I have been defeated. Many times." He pulled up the sleeve on his right arm again, revealing a section of skin that appeared unmarked. "This is where a zero-fight hunter put a paralysis dart through my forearm on Kepler 442. I was unconscious for 6 hours, completely helpless," the crowd murmured. Zero-fight hunters were among the most feared predators in known space, capable of tracking prey across continents and patient enough to stalk a single target for months. "But there's no scar," the serpentine trader observed, its scales shifting to curious yellow. "Because the dart went clean through without hitting bone or major vessels. The Xerophite had me dead to rights." Marcus lowered his arm. "It was standing over me when I woke up, studying me like a specimen. It could have killed me instantly." "Why didn't it?" the navigator asked. "Because it was curious. Xerophites had never encountered a human before. It wanted to understand what kind of creature I was before adding me to its collection." Marcus smiled grimly. "That curiosity saved my life and taught me something important about being underestimated." He pointed to his chest where his jacket covered more hidden scars. "The Xerophite spent 20 minutes examining me, taking samples, recording data. It never occurred to the creature that its dead prey might be planning an escape." The Kavari assassin spoke for the first time since joining the crowd. "Xenophites have enhanced senses. They can detect heartbeat, breathing patterns, neural activity. How did you deceive one? Meditation techniques learned from Terran monks. Humans can consciously control many supposedly automatic bodily functions with proper training. I slowed my heart rate, altered my breathing, minimized brain activity." Marcus paused. "The Xerophite thought it was examining a corpse until I grabbed its throat." A new voice cut through the crowd. "Impossible." The speaker was tall and imposing, with metallic skin that gleamed like polished chrome. A mechanar, one of the cybernetic species that had achieved perfect fusion between organic life and artificial intelligence. Every conversation in the immediate area stopped. Mechanar were known for their logical minds and absolute dedication to factual accuracy. For one to directly challenge a statement meant it had performed calculations and found the claim mathematically impossible. Xerophyte neck anatomy includes armored vertebrae and reinforced musculature, the mechanar continued, its voice perfectly modulated and emotionless. Human grip strength is insufficient to cause significant damage through manual strangulation. Marcus nodded acknowledgement. "You're absolutely correct. I couldn't strangle it." "Then your story is false." "No. My technique was different." Marcus held up his hands, showing calloused palms and fingers that bore small, precise scars. "I didn't try to strangle it. I used its own weapon against it." The mechanar's glowing eyes focused intently on Marcus's hands. "Explain." "Xerophites have retractable venom claws in their fingertips. Very sharp, very poisonous to most species. The creature was leaning over me when I grabbed its wrist and forced its claw into its own throat." The crowd drew back slightly. Using an enemy's weapon against itself was a tactic that required precise timing, intimate knowledge of anatomy, and considerable courage. Xerophyte venom is specifically designed to affect their usual prey species, the crystalline being chimed. It should have minimal effect on the creature's own physiology. True, but Xerophytes hunt by injecting paralytic compounds first, then switching to lethal toxins for the final kill. I forced its paralytic claw into its throat, not the lethal one. Understanding dawned on several alien faces. "You immobilized it," the navigator said with something like admiration. "Long enough to reach its weapon cache and find something more permanently effective," Marcus confirmed. "The paralytic bought me maybe 10 minutes. I used them well." The mechanar processed this information with visible LED indicators flickering behind its optical sensors. "Your tactics demonstrate extensive knowledge of Xerophyte physiology and behavior patterns. Such information is not readily available to most species. Humans are very good at research," Marcus replied simply. "We study everything we encounter. Biology, psychology, technology, culture. We learn from every interaction, even the failed ones." The Krillian merchant had finished preparing the documentation during this exchange. It approached Marcus with obvious respect, offering the data tablets with all 4 arms in a formal gesture of deference. "Your materials are ready for transfer, honored warrior. Payment can be processed through standard galactic banking protocols." Marcus accepted the tablets and began reviewing the specifications. As he worked, he became aware that the crowd around him had grown larger, not smaller. Word of the human with the battle scars was spreading throughout the station. "Tell me," the navigator said quietly. "What do you plan to do with these materials? The quantities you're purchasing suggest major construction projects." Marcus looked up from the tablets, meeting the ancient being's hollow gaze. "Humanity is expanding. We're building new colonies, new infrastructure, new technologies. These elements are essential for our growth." "Growth for what purpose?" the Mechanar inquired with mechanical precision. Marcus smiled, and for the first time since the conversation began, his expression held no trace of grimness or pain. "To become stronger. To learn more. To push further into the unknown than any species has gone before." He gestured toward the scars hidden beneath his clothing. "Every battle teaches us something new. Every defeat shows us where to improve. Every victory proves that the impossible is just another problem waiting to be solved." The marketplace had grown silent around them, dozens of alien beings hanging on every word. "And someday," Marcus continued, his voice carrying clearly in the quiet space, "when humanity has learned enough and grown enough and become strong enough, we're going to explore what lies beyond the edge of known space. We're going to find what's out there in the dark between galaxies." He paused, looking around at the assembled aliens. "And we're going to invite everyone else to come with us." The silence that followed Marcus's words stretched for nearly a full minute. Then the Mechanar spoke, its voice carrying a note that might have been surprise if cybernetic beings were capable of such emotions. "You speak of intergalactic exploration as though it were merely another engineering problem to be solved, isn't it?" Marcus replied, completing his review of the documentation and authorizing the payment transfer. "Humans have always pushed beyond the boundaries of what was thought possible. A few thousand years ago, our ancestors thought the world was flat. Then they discovered continents they never knew existed. Later, they thought the stars were unreachable lights in the sky. Now we trade in marketplaces orbiting those same stars. The navigator's translucent form seemed to pulse with inner light. Intergalactic space is not merely distant, human. It is hostile beyond comprehension. The void between galaxies contains forces that could destroy entire star systems. No known technology can bridge such distances." "No currently known technology," Marcus corrected gently. "But that's what makes it interesting." A new voice joined the conversation, this one belonging to a massive creature that resembled a living mountain of crystal and metal. The crowd parted respectfully as a Titan approached, its footsteps causing small vibrations in the station's deck plating. Titans were among the oldest and most respected species in the galaxy, their civilization predating most others by millions of years. "Young human," the Titan rumbled, its voice like grinding stone. "My people have explored this galaxy for longer than your species has existed. We have mapped every star system, cataloged every phenomenon, reached the very edge of galactic space. What lies beyond is not meant for organic life." Marcus looked up at the towering being with genuine respect. "What did you find at the edge?" "Darkness, cold energies that defy understanding. We lost 3 exploration fleets to phenomena we could not even classify, let alone comprehend." "But you learned from those losses," Marcus said. It wasn't a question. The Titan's massive head tilted slightly. "How do you know this?" "Because you're here talking to me instead of dismissing the idea entirely. Because your people survived for millions of years by adapting and growing. Because every species that's achieved true longevity has done so by turning failures into stepping stones." Marcus gestured toward his hidden scars again. "The same principle applies whether you're talking about personal combat or galactic exploration. Every defeat teaches you something. Every impossible barrier becomes a puzzle to solve." The Kavari assassin had been listening intently to the exchange. Now it stepped forward, its predatory grace evident in every movement. "You speak of learning from failure, human, but some failures are final. Some puzzles cannot be solved. Name one," Marcus challenged. The Kavari's ears flicked back in surprise. "Excuse me? Name one puzzle that cannot be solved. Give me an example of something that is truly permanently impossible." The crowd murmured among themselves. It was an audacious challenge, asking beings with thousands or millions of years of collective experience to prove a negative. The crystalline being chimed thoughtfully. "Faster than light communication across galactic distances. The physics are absolute. We thought faster-than-light travel was impossible too, Marcus replied, until we figured out how to fold space-time. Now I can travel from one end of the galaxy to the other in weeks instead of millennia. Time travel, the Mechanar stated with mechanical certainty. The paradoxes are mathematically irresolvable. Maybe. Or maybe we just haven't developed the right mathematical framework yet. Human physicists are working on temporal mechanics theory that treats time as a navigable dimension rather than a fixed constant. The serpentine trader's scales had shifted to a thoughtful purple, consciousness transfer between incompatible species. The neural architecture differences are too extreme. The Terran Federation has successful consciousness transfer protocols for 7 different species already, Marcus said. We started with the assumption that all consciousness is information, and information can be translated if you understand the encoding properly. Each answer seemed to surprise the aliens more than the last. The idea that humans were actively working to solve problems that other species had declared impossible was clearly unsettling to many of them. The Titan leaned down, bringing its massive crystalline face closer to Marcus's level. You believe your species can solve any problem, overcome any obstacle? Not immediately, no, and not without cost. Marcus's expression grew serious. But eventually, yes. I believe that given enough time, enough resources, and enough willingness to learn from failure, humans can solve any puzzle the universe presents. That level of confidence borders on arrogance, the navigator observed. Maybe, Marcus admitted, but it's also how we've survived this long. Other species look at an impossible problem and accept that it's impossible. Humans look at the same problem and ask, what would make it possible? He pointed to the Titan. Your people lost 3 fleets to unknown phenomena. A human response would be to build a 4th fleet, incorporating everything learned from the previous failures. And if that one failed too, we'd build a 5th and a 6th and a 100th if necessary. That seems wasteful, the Mechanar noted. In the short term, absolutely. But in the long term, it's the most efficient approach possible, because once you solve an impossible problem, it stops being impossible forever. The knowledge spreads, the techniques improve, and the next impossible problem becomes a little easier to tackle. The Krillian merchant, who had been processing the payment while listening to the conversation, looked up from its work. Your transaction is complete, honored warrior. But I find myself curious about something. What's that? You speak of humanity's plans for intergalactic exploration, but your current mission is gathering rare Earth elements for industrial expansion. How do these relate? Marcus smiled, and this time there was genuine warmth in his expression. Every great journey begins with small steps. The elements I'm purchasing today will be used to build better ships, more advanced computers, improved life support systems. Those improvements will enable longer journeys, deeper exploration, more ambitious projects. He gestured around the marketplace. Every species here started the same way. Local exploration, regional expansion, gradual growth into a galactic civilization. The only difference is that humans don't plan to stop at the galactic edge. The Kavari assassin tilted its head curiously. And you believe other species will join you in this impossible journey? I know they will, Marcus said with quiet confidence. Because deep down, every intelligent species shares the same fundamental drive that pushes humans forward. The desire to explore, to discover, to push beyond known boundaries. He looked around at the assembled aliens. Some of you have been exploring space longer than humans have existed as a species. That drive brought you to the stars just like it brought us. It's what makes intelligence meaningful. The navigator's form seemed to shimmer with contemplation. You suggest that the desire for exploration is universal among sentient beings. I suggest that it's what makes us sentient in the first place, Marcus corrected. Intelligence without curiosity is just biological computing power. Consciousness without the drive to explore is just self-aware stagnation. The marketplace around them had grown quiet again as the conversation reached its philosophical heart. Marcus could see aliens of dozens of species listening intently, many of them recording the exchange for later analysis. So yes, he continued, when humanity is ready to take the next great step into the unknown, we'll invite everyone to come with us. Because the greatest discoveries have always been made by diverse groups working together, bringing different perspectives and capabilities to shared challenges. The Titan's voice rumbled like distant thunder. And if we refuse? If we declare your journey too dangerous, Too impossible to attempt. Marcus's smile grew wider. Then we'll go alone, learn what we can, and come back to share what we've discovered. That's what humans do. We explore the impossible so that everyone else can follow the paths we've mapped. He picked up his purchased materials and began securing them for transport. Besides, he added with a slight chuckle, I've got a few more scars to earn before I'm ready for retirement. As Marcus secured his cargo, the crowd around him began to shift and change. Word of the conversation had spread throughout the space station with remarkable speed, and new arrivals were pushing through the marketplace to see the human who spoke of impossible journeys, as though they were weekend trips. A delegation of ethereals materialized near the stall, their gossamer forms barely visible, except for the faint distortion they created in the air around them. These beings were among the most advanced in the galaxy, existing primarily as energy constructs that could manipulate matter at the molecular level. Their spokesperson, if such a term could apply to beings without fixed form, communicated through direct neural interface human. The voice appeared in Marcus's mind with crystalline clarity. Your words suggest capabilities that exceed known human technological development. Are you speaking of theoretical possibilities or actual achievements? Marcus paused in his packing to consider the question. Around him, the other aliens waited with obvious interest. The ethereals were known for their absolute honesty and their ability to detect deception through quantum-level analysis of brain activity. A combination of both, he answered aloud, ensuring the entire crowd could hear his response. Some of what I've described represents current human capabilities that haven't been widely publicized. Some represents theoretical work that's approaching practical application, and some represents long-term goals that we're actively working toward. Specify. Consciousness transfer technology exists and works reliably. We've used it to save the minds of critically injured diplomats and researchers. The faster-than-light communication research is in advanced theoretical stages, with small-scale tests planned for next year. Intergalactic exploration is a long-term goal that we're developing the foundation technologies to support. The ethereal's form shimmered with what might have been approval. You do not overstate your achievements or promise capabilities you do not possess. This is unusual among younger species. A new voice cut through the crowd, harsh and aggressive. Enough of this nonsense. The speaker was a war master of the hegemony, the militaristic empire that controlled nearly a third of the galaxy's inhabitable systems. Its power armor was scarred from countless battles, and its multiple weapon systems were clearly visible despite station regulations about personal armaments. The crowd automatically gave the War Master a wide berth. Hegemony forces were known for their brutality and their absolute disdain for species they considered inferior. You speak of exploration and discovery as though they matter, the War Master continued, its voice amplified by its armor's speakers. The only thing that matters in this galaxy is strength. The strong survive and prosper. The weak are consumed or enslaved. Marcus looked up at the towering figure without apparent concern. I take it you disagree with my assessment? I know it to be false. The War Master's weapon systems hummed with barely contained energy. Your species exists only because stronger powers have allowed it. You survive by hiding behind treaties and trade agreements. When the time comes for real testing, you will be found wanting. The marketplace had gone completely silent. A confrontation between a human civilian and a hegemony war master was the kind of event that could spark interstellar incidents. You might be right, Marcus said calmly, continuing to secure his cargo. Humans have certainly never faced a direct military challenge from the hegemony. Because you lack the courage for such a test? Marcus straightened up, meeting the War Master's glowing optical sensors with steady eyes. Or because we're intelligent enough to choose our battles. There's a difference between cowardice and strategic thinking. Strategic thinking, the War Master's voice dripped contempt. You mean calculation and manipulation, typical of weak species that cannot fight openly. I mean understanding the true nature of strength, Marcus replied. Physical power is only one type of strength and often not the most important one. The War Master took a step forward, its massive frame casting a shadow over Marcus. Explain. The strongest military force in galactic history was the Xanthar Empire. They conquered 200 systems through pure military might. They had the most advanced weapons, the largest fleets, the most disciplined soldiers. Marcus paused. Where is their empire now? Several aliens in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. Everyone knew the answer to that question. Destroyed by internal rebellion, the Mechanar stated factually. The Xanthar Empire collapsed when its subject species united against it. Exactly. Marcus nodded toward the cybernetic being. Raw military power couldn't save them when they faced an enemy that understood their weaknesses and exploited them. The rebels didn't win through superior firepower. They won through superior strategy, better intelligence, and more effective coordination. The War Master's weapon systems cycled with an ominous whining sound. You compare the hegemony to a failed empire? I'm pointing out that even the strongest militaries have weaknesses. Physical strength is limited by logistics, morale, economics, politics. True strength comes from adapting to challenges and finding solutions to problems that can't be solved through force alone. Marcus gestured toward his hidden scars. Every battle I survived taught me that lesson. Sometimes the strongest response to overwhelming force is to redirect it. Sometimes the smartest strategy is to avoid the battle entirely and strike at points your enemy didn't think to defend. The navigator floated closer, its translucent form positioned between Marcus and the War Master. You speak of asymmetric warfare as a virtue rather than a necessity. Because it is a virtue. The ability to analyze a superior opponent, identify their vulnerabilities, and develop counters to their advantages. That's intelligence applied to survival. It's evolution in action. The Titan's voice rumbled through the deck plating. The hegemony has conquered systems with populations in the billions. Their military record speaks for itself. Their military record speaks to their current tactics, Marcus corrected. But tactics that work against one type of opponent may fail completely against a different type. The question isn't whether the hegemony can defeat its current enemies. The question is whether it can adapt when it faces something genuinely new. The War Master's optical sensors focused intently on Marcus. You speak as though humanity represents such a challenge. Humanity represents a different approach to problem solving. We don't try to outmuscle our opponents. We try to outthink them. Marcus shouldered his cargo pack, preparing to leave. The hegemony has spent centuries perfecting the art of overwhelming force. That's an impressive achievement. But what happens when you encounter a problem that can't be solved by applying more pressure? Give me an example, the War Master demanded. Marcus smiled. Intergalactic exploration. You can't conquer the void between galaxies. You can't intimidate the laws of physics. You can't force your way past the fundamental barriers that separate one galaxy from another. He started walking toward the marketplace exit, the crowd parting before him. Those problems require a different kind of strength. The strength to admit ignorance and learn. The strength to fail repeatedly and keep trying. The strength to work with former enemies toward shared goals. The War Master's voice followed him. And you believe humanity possesses this strength? Marcus paused at the edge of the crowd, looking back at the assembled aliens. I believe humanity is willing to develop it. We're willing to learn from everyone, including the hegemony. Your military innovations could be invaluable for deep space exploration. Your discipline and organization could help coordinate multi-species expeditions. He smiled at the War Master's obvious surprise. The strongest approach to impossible challenges isn't to face them alone. It's to bring together the best capabilities from every available source and combine them in new ways. The ethereal's voice whispered through his mind again. You would work with those who consider your species inferior? I would work with anyone willing to push the boundaries of what's possible, Marcus replied. Pride is a luxury that explorers can't afford. The universe doesn't care about our political differences or our cultural prejudices. It only responds to competence, determination, and the willingness to keep trying when everyone else gives up. He hefted his pack and turned toward the exit. Besides, he added over his shoulder, some of my best scars came from learning to fight alongside former enemies. The marketplace remained silent as Marcus disappeared into the crowd, leaving behind dozens of aliens with a great deal to think about. 3 hours later, Marcus stood in the observation lounge of his transport ship, watching the space station grow smaller through the reinforced viewport. The rare Earth elements were secured in his cargo hold, and his ship's navigation computer was already plotting the most efficient route back to human space. But his mind wasn't on the journey ahead. Instead, he was thinking about the conversation he'd left behind. The ship's communication system chimed softly, indicating an incoming message. Marcus activated the display, expecting routine shipping notifications or updated navigation data. Instead, he found himself looking at the Krillian merchant's insectoid features. Honored warrior, the alien said without preamble. "I hope your departure proceeds smoothly. I contact you because there have been developments since you left the marketplace." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "What kind of developments?" "The discussion you began has not ended. Word of your words has spread throughout the station, and beings are coming from all sectors to hear the recordings. The navigator has called for a formal assembly. The Titans are sending representatives. Even the ethereals are manifesting in greater numbers than anyone has seen in decades." The display shifted to show images of the marketplace, now packed with hundreds of aliens from dozens of species. Marcus could see beings he hadn't noticed during his transaction. Ancient crystalline sages whose knowledge spanned millennia, nomadic void walkers who rarely visited civilized space, even a few representatives of the mysterious architects who were rumored to have built some of the galaxy's most important infrastructure. "What are they discussing?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew. "Your proposal for intergalactic exploration. More specifically, they are debating whether such an endeavor is possible, whether it is desirable, and whether humanity should be trusted to lead it." Marcus leaned back against the viewport, considering the implications. "And what's the general consensus?" The Krillian's mandibles clicked in what Marcus had learned to recognize as uncertainty. "There is no consensus. Some species see the potential for unprecedented discovery and expansion. Others fear the unknown dangers such exploration might unleash. Still others question whether any single species should take the lead on something so significant. But they're talking about it seriously." "They are talking about it seriously," the merchant confirmed. The Titan representative called it the first genuinely new idea to emerge from the younger species in 10,000 years. The navigator described it as either inspired vision or dangerous delusion, with insufficient data to determine which. Marcus smiled. "And the Hegemony Warmaster has requested detailed information about human military capabilities and strategic doctrines. He claims he is evaluating potential threats, but others believe he is genuinely curious about your species' approach to problem solving." The communication display expanded to show multiple video feeds from different areas of the station. Everywhere Marcus looked, he could see clusters of aliens engaged in intense discussions. Some groups were examining star charts and galactic navigation data. Others were reviewing humanity's historical records and technological achievements. A few were apparently running complex mathematical simulations. "They're actually considering it," Marcus said, more to himself than to the Krillian. "More than considering. The navigator has formally requested that the Galactic Council review your species' proposal for inclusion in their long-term strategic planning. The Titans are discussing whether to share certain restricted technologies that could accelerate the development timeline. Even the ethereals are offering to contribute their expertise in consciousness preservation for long-distance travel." Marcus felt a chill of excitement run down his spine. The Galactic Council was the closest thing to a unified government that existed for the major spacefaring civilizations. For them to formally consider a human proposal was unprecedented. "There's more," the Krillian continued. "The Assembly has voted to send an official delegation to Earth. They want to meet with your government, examine your research facilities, and assess your species' actual capabilities versus your stated goals." "How soon?" "The delegation should arrive in human space within 6 months. They'll expect detailed presentations on your intergalactic exploration plans, demonstrations of relevant technologies, and formal commitments regarding timeline and resource allocation." Marcus was quiet for several long moments, processing the information. When he'd begun this routine trading mission, his only goal had been to acquire materials for humanity's expanding industrial base. He certainly hadn't expected to commit his entire species to the most ambitious exploration project in galactic history. "Krillian," he said finally, "does this delegation understand that I'm not an official representative of humanity? I'm a civilian contractor with no authority to make promises on behalf of my government." The alien's compound eyes glittered with what might have been amusement. "They understand perfectly, honored warrior. But they also recognize that ideas often originate with individuals rather than institutions. Your personal scars demonstrated that humans are capable of surviving impossible situations. Your words suggested that your species might be capable of achieving impossible goals. And if humanity can't live up to the expectations I've created, then the galaxy will have lost nothing but time and hope. The Krillian replied. But if your species can deliver even a fraction of what you've suggested, it could change the fundamental nature of galactic civilization. Marcus watched the space station disappear into the star field, its lights becoming just another point of brightness against the cosmic dark. Somewhere behind him, hundreds of ancient species were discussing humanity's future based on a conversation. He'd started to educate a few prejudiced aliens about human capabilities. No pressure at all, he muttered to himself. The ship's communication system chimed again, this time with an incoming message from Earth. Marcus activated the display to find the stern features of Admiral Sarah Chen, his sister, and the current head of the Terran Federation's Exploration Division. Marcus, I just received some very interesting reports from our intelligence assets throughout the galaxy. Care to explain why half the known species are suddenly requesting information about human exploration capabilities? Marcus sighed. It's a long story, Sarah. I have time. And Marcus? Whatever you've started out there, you'd better hope we can deliver on it. The President is already asking questions, and the Science Council is demanding briefings. Marcus looked out at the stars ahead, thinking about the scars hidden beneath his clothing and the new challenges that awaited him at home. Each mark on his body represented a lesson learned, a boundary pushed, an impossible situation overcome. We'll deliver, he said quietly, speaking as much to himself as to his sister. Humans always do. We just need to figure out how. Behind him, the galaxy's greatest minds continued their discussions, debating the merits and dangers of humanity's greatest proposal. Ahead of him, Earth waited with questions he would somehow have to answer. And beyond both, in the dark void between galaxies, unknown challenges waited to test everything humanity had learned about pushing past the impossible. Marcus smiled and began composing his report. It was going to be a very interesting few decades. In the cargo hold below, the rare Earth elements that had started this entire chain of events sat quietly in their containment units, ready to contribute their small part to humanity's expansion into the unknown. Sometimes, Marcus reflected, the most important journeys really did begin with the smallest steps. And sometimes the best way to earn new scars was to promise the impossible, and then figure out how to deliver it. The stars ahead seemed brighter than usual as his ship carried him home to begin humanity's next great adventure.